I 100% love the fact that we're talking about balancing priorities in our life, including what we need to do in terms of productivity and then our mental health, because I do feel that at this stage in our evolution as people, we're talking about this more than we ever have before. But I do think that it's still not enough, that there are so many people that put themselves in the back burner. But I wanted to hear more of your thoughts on why you chose to talk about this today.
Sure. So I have been thinking about this a lot more now, specifically because of the situation that we're dealing with. I think we've had to reprioritize a lot of the things that we used to think about in terms of our work and our families. And so I've been really struggling with a fraction of my mental health that is the guilt region. I like to visualize it. So I picture it as this part of my life that is guilt. And so I've been dealing a lot with guilt of not being able to perform very productively if I don't think I'm meeting a certain standard. I've been dealing with guilt in terms of being distant from my family. And I've been feeling that guilt in a lot of different decisions that I make, down to the daily decisions. And it's really been affecting my mental health and my productivity beyond that. So it's something that I've been struggling with in real time, and I've been realizing the importance of addressing it more than I ever have before this time.
Sabeen, where does the guilt come from? If you had to find the source, what is the source of the guilt?
I think it comes from expectations, many of which I've set for myself. And that's why I think this conversation is so relevant and important right now, because those expectations, I think, are or have been encouraged in the past by things like academic pressure and work pressure in general. We do live in a society in which we work more than we really do anything else. In a typical setting, right after college, we jump into these entry level positions, and we jump into these really great positions that sometimes really overwork us. And so it's this mentality of doing a lot and doing really well and constantly doing better. So I think that expectation I internalized.
And I'm sure many people listening can understand placing high expectations on ourselves. So many of us place our worth as people on what we can do. However, that's not where our worth as human beings come from. Because if that were true, then people who can't produce consistently, we would find to be less worthy. And we don't believe that about other people, but we do believe it about ourselves. And so what do we do about it, especially as college students? How do you balance, I need to get excellent grades if I'm going to be considered for this next step in my life, or to be taken seriously, with then also needing to take excellent care of our mental health and ourselves?
I think that is the question of the year. That's the most challenging question. There's no easy answer and there's no easy formula for everybody. What I do know that is the earlier you start, the more important it is. So the earlier that we start compartmentalizing parts of our life and prioritizing our physical and mental well-being is the earlier that we start realizing, I don't want to get to burnout anytime soon. And that does mean compartmentalizing, saying no to things, which is really hard as a college student, especially when you're involved in a lot of things and you want to do well. Sometimes you can't take it on, and you don't realize that until after you've taken it on. It's okay to disappoint people sometimes. It's a very big deal for me. I'm very afraid of disappointing people in my life, especially those close to me. And I think I had to start thinking about what disappointment really means and whether or not I was actually truly disappointing someone or if I just felt like I was, and understanding what I'm losing there. So weighing the pros and cons of that and making those decisions more consciously rather than just saying yes and then struggling later.
One of the things I heard you say is that the younger it starts, the better. And that is absolutely the reason why myself in my age group, I believe that, and why I bring it to the college classrooms as well. One of the quotes that always sticks with me is that the relationship we have with ourselves sets the tone for every other relationship we'll ever have. You also talked about the power of saying no. One practice that I put into place for myself is, even if I have that initial desire to say yes, somebody's asking something of me, hmm, that's super interesting. Let me get back to you in 24 hours. I need to think about it. So that's one thing that I know I put into practice. Is there something that you put into practice to help you say no when you need to?
I think it comes with practice. I think that the better we get, or the more that we start saying, now is not a really good time for me to take this on, I won't do it, and to stick to that, and to feel confident in that decision, the better we get at doing it when it's really important. And it becomes a little bit easier to prioritize your own life.
Seems like you've then been working on strengthening your boundaries. I 100% wish I had started getting very clear on healthy boundaries earlier too. Growing up in a family where my father was suffering with alcoholism, which meant that our entire family was suffering with alcoholism, that most definitely blurred a lot of lines. And then later on in college, when I started counseling, I was able to get clearer about those boundaries, and it took many years. So I also recommend to anybody that's in a situation like that, when you're in college, you have counselors at your disposal, included in your tuition. And I don't know that enough people are willing to seek that out when they need to. But getting clear on boundaries was really big for me. It sounds like that's what you've been doing too. We've been talking about taking good care of ourselves. What is the most recent thing that you did to take really good care of you?
I moved. That was a very, very big deal for me. And that was a major decision for my self care and for my mental health. And it was a very difficult decision. And that was one of the really big examples of me exploring boundary management, exploring the management of my guilt, and understanding that I needed to prioritize myself, even if it didn't make sense in other areas that I thought were more important at the time, such as cost. I was putting cost on a pedestal that was beyond my well being, that was beyond my self care to an extent that was not going to be sustainable for my health. Um, and so I really had to play around with justifying that with myself, and to seriously think about that. So I moved and I made a decision for myself that I am still coming to terms with, and I'm experiencing gradual gratitude for that decision.
Well, congratulations on the new place.
Thank you.
One of the topics that we definitely wanted to touch on is this idea of how do we take good care of ourselves from home now that we're not able to go out and move as much or even engage as much outside. And it's also very easy to blur lines when home is where you're also working. Right? And people who have been working remotely, they've been dealing with this for a really long time. Those of us who were thrown into it more recently don't have as much experience. So what do you think about those dynamics?
I think the compartmentalization is more important now than ever. I think having cutoff times that are sustainable for the work that you're doing. I think being a student, the lines are way more blurred. I'm studying usually way beyond certain hours that I wish I would be. But in general, having cutoff times to close my computer, sit with myself, read as I would love to do, and setting those boundaries in terms of just my day to day life are really important.
Which is so hard. I find it very difficult to set up blocks like that. But I am intentional about taking significant breaks away where I don't have a choice because I'm not here. So I can't work. That's the way that it works for me. More so than just changing the time, I actually have to change the environment.
Yeah, I actually have my apartment split into two sections. It's one room, it's a studio, but I have my bed on one side and my desk on one side, and I try not to go near the bed the whole day. I need the separation. So do what works for you. However, the setup works in a small space, it's completely possible.
As a recent college graduate, now a full-time graduate student, what would you say are some of the challenges that you're facing as a younger person in our world today trying to finish up her master's?
In general, I think it's hard for us to have suddenly switched our learning styles. I think getting a graduate degree that all of a sudden transitioned online has been a challenge for not just me, but almost my entire cohort. Not everybody is adjusted to online learning. And I think in general, right now, I'm studying public health. I'm studying something that is hopefully really important to the world right now. But I think right now, I'm really concerned about the state of our healthcare system. And so going into the workforce, that's something that I see as a very big challenge, but I'm ready to take on.
And I noticed that you have taken action steps towards sharing accurate, relevant, meaningful content about our health. On LinkedIn, I saw that you were taking this approach of sharing information that was verified and that was true because you were concerned about the amount of information being presented that perhaps didn't have a sound backing.
Yes, I felt it was really important in March to start with accurate information. That was a very difficult, challenging, confusing time for everybody. There was very new information, there was unverified information floating around. And so I felt that I was hopefully providing information to people that weren't getting it in other areas.
Yes, and I want to applaud you for doing that. Now, let me ask you this. If you could go back in time and talk to your 18-year-old self, but you only have 15 seconds to do it, what would you say to 18-year-old Sabeen?
Be brave. I would tell her to be brave. I would tell her that it doesn't get easier, but you're stronger than you know.
I love it. That's very powerful. What is your message for our audience in one sentence? What's the bottom line message that you want to share with everyone today?
Sometimes, in recognizing our own worth, we have to say no to other people, and sometimes it may feel like we're disappointing other people. But I promise you that it's worth it, and I promise you that it's worth it to start early, and it will be okay.
Yes, definitely. And if you had to put your message on a t-shirt, so there's only a few words that fit on the t-shirt, what do you narrow it down to? What gets printed on that shirt for you?
It's okay to say no. I guess that's my overarching message.
Right. And another area that we touched on is where where those messages of guilt come from. It's part of being a human being to feel these negative emotions. And the younger we can start to understand that they're a part of our human experience, but that they are within our ability to control, I do think that that will help us to be much healthier when we're in college, when we're in graduate school, as we approach other stages. So I think you and I share, Sabine, this idea of investing in other people, and most of the time for me it's people that are younger because I'm teaching in a university setting. How do you feel about investing in younger people?
I think they are our future. I think that that is the best that I've known to do, and I've seen you do that in real time, and it's proven to be super fruitful and super meaningful. And so I think that that's something that we have to continue to do generationally, is to look to our younger people and look to them for inspiration, creativity, and also look to them to ensure that we are securing their safety and securing their worth, and making them and helping them understand that they are worth taking care of themselves and us taking care of them.
1,000% I agree with that. And if I had to sum up in one sentence the message of self-worth that I've tried to convey in the classroom, it's our worth does not decrease because of someone else's inability to see our value. Where we get trapped as people is when we associate our worth with our work only. Because of course we want to make meaningful contributions. You're not going to graduate school to not have an impact, to not affect other people. You want to be doing those things, and similarly I do too. But we have to have a strong sense of worth with or without any of those things.
Absolutely, 100% agree with that.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing this message today. It's truly, Sabine, it is one of my absolute favorite things to talk about in the world.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited about your project, and I can't wait to see the other interviews as well.